In this video, we listen to Jo Bullingham, General Manager of POTS UK, and Emily Cochrane, Clinical Exercise Physiologist, discuss pacing, why it is so important to be aware of what it is, and how to do it.
First and foremost, what is pacing? And then secondly, why is it so important for people with POTS?
Great question, Jo. So traditionally, pacing is something that is used for people with fatigue syndromes and persistent pain conditions as well. And when I say traditionally, I mean that's what we see in the literature when we have a look at what it is and why it's used. But what we're looking at is breaking up our activities across the day. So instead of engaging in lots of activities back to back that cost us energy, we're actually looking at how could we spread them across the day and have rest breaks or lower energy activities in between to give our body the opportunity to wind down the nervous system and minimize some of those symptoms that we experience, Jo. That's it in its traditional form. But as you would have imagined, it can look really different to everybody how that's implemented. And one of the things that I often stress is that it is going to be quite different for each person and might need to be modified, looking a little different from those traditional methods as well.
Okay, thank you. And what are some good tips to help people with POTS pace themselves?
Excellent question. So one thing I've noticed in clinic especially, and myself included, Jo, is that we do tend to have very active minds by nature, which means that we might not actually know what low energy or restful activities look like for us. So often I recommend to people that if they are interested in developing a low energy list, that gives them an idea of what activities can be restful and restorative for their nervous system. And once they have a better idea of what those things might be, they can then have an easier time of sprinkling those low energy tasks across the day and breaking up the higher intensity activities. Keeping in mind when I talk about high intensity or activities that cost energy, those of course are going to look different for everyone as well, Jo. As I mentioned in one of the other recordings, brushing your teeth, that could be high energy for some people, and sitting up, that could be high energy for some people as well. Whereas, for other people, it could be doing the dishes or other housework tasks. So that is all going to be quite individualized, what we're looking at, which also means our low energy activities will be different from person to person too, Jo.
Okay. Thank you so much. And would you count POTS management strategies as part of pacing?
Yeah, so a lot of people have shared with me that those who are living with POTS, they do actually consider a lot of their POTS management strategies as part of their pacing. Because when you think about things like resting and putting your feet up or lying down, they might be POTS management strategies, but they're also going to be really good low energy activities to help wind the nervous system down as well. If you think of things like staying hydrated, having your 500 mils of fluid, keeping your salt intake up, they can be incorporated as restful activities. So sitting down, having those things, but they're going to boost the circulation and also help that nervous system wind down in itself. So I can see from a clinical perspective why a lot of people would also consider their POTS management strategies as part of their pacing, Jo.
Thank you. And I mean, from talking to volunteers and emails that we get from people, I think pacing seems to be something that when people are new to POTS, that is an enormous challenge because their life might have just been turned absolutely upside down and they're used to going at 100 miles an hour and suddenly that's just not possible. Do you have any sort of views on how people can be kind to themselves and adjust to what is a really different pace of life potentially, from what they've been used to and how they can kind of manage that sort of shock and that change?
Gosh, look, it's really easy for me to sit here and provide suggestions, Jo, but I also have a lot of empathy that it's a lot harder for people to put those things in place. Like it's very easy for me to say them, very difficult to implement them. But one of the things that can be useful is making sure that you do have those supports around you emotionally. So maybe that's having friends or family that can support you and that you can talk to. Or it could also be seeing a psychologist to get some more formal support with that. Because there is a grief period and adjustment with experiencing these conditions, especially early on in that journey, when things can feel like they're at their most challenging and their newest. So understanding that if people thought that support would be helpful, it is there to help them.
Yeah.
And yeah, not being afraid to reach out and find someone who is quite understanding of POTS as well.
Yeah, and I guess we've got POTS UK have got online peer support groups that pacing is a topic that gets discussed a lot, and because it is such a challenge, so hopefully accessing online peer support groups could be really beneficial there.
Absolutely, I send so many people that way, Jo. I'm like,
oh, that's good.
Because it's a lovely way to learn from people that have had that experience as well. So.
Yeah. And I think in the same way as with exercise, like, having to build it up in those tiny little bits, I think from, what we hear, it's that it's the same with pacing, is to start very small, aim low, and then, build it up bit by bit, and, being so kind to yourself and keeping a track again of how it's going. What did you do last week, so that you can have a look and go back to last week and think, actually, that was a really tough day. And whilst today has been really challenging, it has been slightly better than last week, and trying to analyze why that is. Back to the notebook again.
Yeah. And something around that too, Jo, that's quite useful too, is a lot of people will think about diaries and keeping track of their symptoms. And that's wonderful if people are finding that useful. But another way of reframing that is keeping a diary and looking at the energy expenditure that people are using, because that can be quite useful when it comes to breaking up your day and seeing where the rest breaks might be of benefit, rather than just focusing on the symptoms. So it just gives a bit of a wider perspective on what might be going on there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else that you feel would be helpful to say on the topic of pacing?
Oh, one of the big things that does come to mind is we know that there can be a high prevalence of people who are neurodivergent living with POTS, because that hypermobility element is a link between those conditions. And pacing, it certainly has its challenges in general, but it can have some really unique challenges for people who are neurodivergent, particularly if we are living with conditions like ADHD. So if we're seeking support around that, again, reaching out to somebody who is quite understanding in that space, whether it's a psychologist, occupational therapist, clinical exercise physiologist, whatever is a good fit for you and what you're wanting to achieve. But it's taking that traditional pacing and then making sure it's not just supporting things like our POTS, but also our neurodivergence as well, Jo.
Yeah.
Because it's, if we ever feel like we're not doing a good job of pacing, it's not us. It's just that we might not have found the right strategies for us yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that comes back to, again, just that how it's different for absolutely everybody, isn't it? And it's again the bigger picture, needing to factor in all the different elements and your different conditions and everything else going on with your life, your family setup and your work. Everything is going to play into your story differently, and I guess it's got to be what works for you. So it's very hard, isn't it, to ever give a one size fits all sort of advice or approach, because everyone's so different.
Exactly right. That's I couldn't have said that better, Jo.
In summary, pacing is a challenge. It can be very hard to adjust to a different pace of life. Break your activities up across the day or across several days. Low energy tasks and high energy tasks are going to look different for each person. Plan in rest breaks or low energy activities in between higher energy tasks to help wind down the nervous system and minimise your symptoms. Try and explain pacing to your friends and family. It can be hard for people to understand your new pace and the need for it, but having their support and understanding is so helpful. Keep a diary or journal to help analyse your day and work out when rest breaks may be needed. If it's not working, keep trying new things until you find the right setup for you. For more information, visit www.potsuk.org.